So in interviews in the past, we focused on exposures of small to mid-sized enterprises. However, I wanted to dedicate some time to addressing the threats posed to us as individuals and how we can protect ourselves. So I've asked Eric Cernak, president of the cyber division at the Hanover Insurance Group, to join us and share his expertise on the topic. And he has a lot of expertise. Over the last 15 years, Eric's primary focus has been developing, underwriting, and managing portfolios of privacy and cyber-related insurance products. Eric, welcome to our podcast.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to everybody.
How are individuals being targeted by cyber criminals?
Yeah, it's a great question to start us off with. I think there's a multitude of ways, and the criminals and the threat actors are always finding new ways to go after folks. In particular, there's probably four major ways that I've been seeing it occur over the last 10, 15 years, and I'm sure there'll be numerous other ways into the future. On one end of the spectrum is that good old-fashioned social engineering, where the criminals impersonate somebody either a person or an organization or a business that you do business with or trust, and they can create a dossier from the information that they glean from maybe social media posts that you put out there, and they get you to turn over that personal information or the credentials to some of your accounts. And so that's one way that's running rampant right now. We see a lot of that. The other way, and it builds upon that, is they can do something similar, but rather than try to get you to send money or to transfer credentials, they'll get you to click on a link, and you then download some malicious software onto your device, and that then does the work. There's this thing called a pineapple that many people aren't necessarily familiar with, but that's why you might hear when people talk about doing work or banking on public Wi-Fi to be careful. It's because they can do what's called a man-in-the-middle attack with a device called a pineapple, and they're really just sitting there listening in between the construct of what's going on. And then the other one that we're seeing, some people will say it's the downfall of multi-factor authentication or MFA, but it's hijacking your SIM card in your cell phone, and they'll then transfer that number to another SIM card, and they can get those authentication texts on your behalf. And so those are some of the ways that we're seeing it occur. I'm sure there are a multitude of other ways, but those are the four that I keep looking at in the current environment.
Sure, just so I'm clear. So basically, they try to trick you into handing over credentials or money to them, or they trick you into giving you access to your computer system, and then they get information or steal money or credentials that way. And then the pineapple thing is interesting. Is that like you're at a coffee shop and then someone else, do they need to be at the coffee shop with you?
Generally, they would need to be in the same general vicinity, and they'll have a little box that's maybe smaller than the size of a cell phone kind of hiding off to the side, and they're really intercepting the signal between your device on the Wi-Fi network and, say, the router on that network that you're using to access the internet. And that's why one of the best precautions is using a virtual private network to connect in those situations, because that's encrypting the information. So even if I am sitting there monitoring it, there's nothing I can see.
Right.
And a VPN will encrypt everything between the connection. Another good thing is if you're using one of the websites that has a little lock on it that's telling you it's encrypted, but it's only in that browser session. So the VPN gives you a more global type of approach to security, and then the little lock symbol on a particular website is also a good check there. So it's, like I said, that's on the more sophisticated side. So it's just one of those things to be aware of if you're using public Wi-Fi that's free and available at the coffee shop, the airport, the hotel, things like that.
Gotcha. And then the hijack your SIM card, do they have to they essentially steal your cell phones, switch it out?
They don't necessarily need to get physical access to it, but there's a way, because if you think about it, a lot of phones these days have what they call an eSIM. So it's not even a physical SIM card anymore in your cell phone. It's an electronic SIM card. And so they're just hijacking the numbers, if you will, of that SIM card and directing it to go to a different place.
Okay. And how do they do that?
That gets into a little bit more technical discussion that it probably would take the multitude of this discussion to get into.
Okay, just thought I'd ask. So do we have an idea of just how prevalent these threats are to individuals?
Yeah, there's lots of different information that's out there. Obviously, I'll tend to look at some of the government reporting agencies like the FBI. They pull together a lot of information. in what they call their IC3 report. And as I look at the most recent one available, which was 2023, they received almost 1,100 reports of SIM jacking, and that totaled close to 49 million in losses. So it's not infrequently that this is going on. And in addition to that, I think there was almost 52,000 complaints pertaining to, I'll call it government or business support, customer support impersonation. So if somebody picks up the phone and calls you and says, hey, you might have a virus on your computer. You need to follow these directions. They're impersonating one of your trusted vendors. And that came in at $1.3 billion in 2023. So it's happening. It's happening a lot.
Out of curiosity, are these overseas criminals, or are a lot of them domestic?
Yeah, hard to say because people tend not to get caught. That's why they do this. There is a significant element that is overseas. They have the infrastructure overseas to work on this stuff in kind of some solitude.
How is artificial intelligence being leveraged by cyber criminals now, and how can individuals safeguard themselves?
Yeah, and that's going to be something we're going to have to watch closely, probably over the next 18 months to 24 months in particular, as it's just starting now to find its way into kind of mainstream society. I think the biggest thing you're going to see with generative AI is, we talked about the social engineering attacks that are ongoing against people. They can ramp up the effectiveness and the frequency in which they effectuate those types of attacks. Let's say somebody could use it, quote unquote, deep fake, where they're again using clips of somebody's voice that was taken from the internet to more effectively impersonate them. And it could be to the point where you post something on one of the social media sites, they can grab images from the video and or commentary from the video, and they can parlay that into, say, a message for help to a grandmother asking for money. So I think it's going to make those attacks much more effective. Like everybody's thinking AI is going to do, it's going to lower their costs to do it, so they're going to be able to do it more frequently, and again with a higher degree of success. So I think that's one of the things to look at. I think it will influence the fraudulent aspect. The other thing to think about, as AI starts to influence some of the home connected devices and how much connectivity you have in your home, are there ways that it can start to affect that, or even in your automobile as they become more connected and start to use AI a little bit more in their decision making? So I think that it can go in a number of different ways. We're at the very beginning of seeing what the potential impacts could be.
Do you see anything like cyberbullying?
Yeah, when you look at kind of harassment and cyberbullying, there has been a lot of that in the news as of late. A lot of it having to do with, there's some software packages out there that people can download fairly inexpensively that can doctor, again, those pictures that might be on websites or social media sites. And children and teens are probably most at risk here, because what they're doing is using that to alter those images, where it might be an innocent image of a person on the beach, and these software packages can remove clothes of that individual, and then they get published at school or other places. Causes a lot of mental anguish and stress, as you can imagine, on the victim who did nothing wrong.
Yeah, the imagery has gotten a lot better. So I hear through the news, it looks very realistic, unfortunately.
I think there were maybe 90 websites or so where you could actually take random images of folks and have them doctored, and it's becoming more and more realistic and difficult to tell the difference.
Any other rising cyber crime trends that we maybe expect to see in 2025?
Yeah, I think the generative AI thing is going to be the thing to watch. Those folks that are 50 years and older tend to be a little bit less technologically inclined, let's say, and perhaps have the most assets, right? So it's back to, why do you rob the banks? Because that's where the money is. We discussed AI making things more realistic. It's already difficult for some of our seniors to be vigilant about some of these fraudulent attacks. It's going to be even more difficult for them as they become more realistic through the use of AI. So I don't know that's a new trend, but I think it is a trend to watch in 2025 and see how the age demographics get impacted by these new technologies.
Now, shifting to the insurance, what cyber insurance options are available to individuals?
So when it comes to coverages and products for individuals, I think most people are probably aware of identity theft insurance. That's been around for 20 years. But something that's a little bit more new to the scene is personal cyber insurance. A lot of times that's going to be delivered as an endorsement to, say, your homeowner's coverage. And it picks up a lot of the things that we just talked about, right? The cost to recover from a cyberbullying event, those fraud costs that you might incur because you were tricked into sending money someplace. A lot of times you're going to probably have limits maybe up to 100,000 coverage that's going to be available for you. And then in addition to the monetary benefit of the coverage, a lot of these products will include some services to go along with it, whether it's a form of credit freezing, credit monitoring, dark web monitoring, maybe some security products like a password keeper or things along those lines to be on the proactive side. So they're a melding of kind of the reactive, make you whole should you fall victim. And then there's often a proactive element service that goes with it to hopefully prevent you from falling victim.
How does an individual cyber insurance protect an individual's assets and reputation?
From the reputational aspect of it, there's a lot of times where you might be volunteering in town and have data and access to people's information in town. And if that information were to get out, you would have a reputational issue there. So these products can help restore some of those items. If you had personal identifying information, you're going to have to notify people perhaps and or provide services to those folks. And we already talked about the cyberbullying. There'll be costs there if your student had to be taken out of school and be privately tutored, or perhaps you want to add some software to further protect, what sites and who can see what on your systems. And then you're going to have some legal expenses and some potential expenses to take down some of the information or images that might be out there. So I think that there's a lot of activity that needs to be done from a cyberbullying perspective.
Gotcha. What measures can an individual take to protect themselves from a cyber attack or cyber scam?
Yeah, and there's a couple of things that can be done, low cost, simple. The first is just be vigilant. Schemes now involve text messaging because people like to act quickly on text messages. There was one that was going around pretty rampantly up here in the Northeast United States with turnpike authorities, and you were getting a text saying that you owed money for your tolls on, say, the New Jersey Turnpike or the Mass Turnpike, and they were hoping you'd click the link and give them credentials or make a payment to a fraudulent site. If you ever get a text or an email or an inbound phone call, first thing to do is take a breath, think about who's calling, what they're asking for. If they're asking to be made whole because with the use of a gift card, that's a number one flag, never paying gift cards. Never give out that kind of information about your credit card or personal information. Your best bet is to go find that source online and contact through a different channel that is trusted and hasn't been modified. The other is we talked about a VPN, very easy to get one, very inexpensive to get one. I have one on my phone and my machines. We just click a button and it turns on. And again, everything is encrypted from your machine or your device onto the network. Keep your operating software up to date. A lot of those pushes are patches for security updates. So when you get a notice of update your device, do that. That's cheap and easy. I'd consider using antivirus programs on devices. There should be new products that are coming out in the smart device category will be able to voluntarily participate in the U.S. Cyber Trust Mark Initiative. And basically, it's a voluntary program that's designed to indicate to consumers that the products will meet federal standards when it comes to cybersecurity, and they'll have a QR code or a shield on it that you can look for more information. So it's setting a minimum standard on thing. Think of it like the quote unquote housekeeping seal of approval
For the devices themselves.
For the devices themselves, yeah. So if you're buying a smart light switch or a garage door opener, these products should start coming through with this. If they've chosen to participate, it's supposed to be a differentiator for those manufacturers.
Something that's come up before is concerns of clients of ours is if they're in a real estate transaction, they're transferring a big sum of money to make a purchase on a home. Is there any advice you can give to a potential homeowner there or purchaser of property?
Yeah, I think you can always ask questions of your realtor and the title agent and the attorney in that regard. Like, what are they doing to safeguard? How are they validating the wire transfer request so that you know that when the request gets initiated, they're following through on it. So I think it's good to understand the security measures that the people you're working with are putting in place. And again, if you're getting requests for wire transfers, pick up the phone, go out of channel, different channel from where you received the request to validate that either with the bank or with the requesting entity. Essentially, the best thing you can do and the cheapest thing you can do is slow down and take a breath when it comes to cybersecurity, because that's what they're preying on, right? Is they're trying to ramp up some sense of urgency that is trying to get you to respond without thinking. And so if you can slow down, take a breath, I know that's easier said than done, that will go a long ways in making yourself more secure.
Yeah, good advice. Eric, anything else? Those are all my questions. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think we've covered a lot, Matt. And if there's more that you want to interrogate at a later date, I'm happy to do that. We can jump on again and do some follow-up.
Sounds good. Eric, I appreciate your time and appreciate your insights and perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Matt.